On November 24th of 1971, D.B. Cooper, also known as Dan Cooper, an unidentified man, hijacked Northwest Orient Airlines flight number 305 and held it hostage. This week, the Jackalopes will explore the mystery of D.B. Cooper.
This week's episode of Jackalopes Explore is brought to you by Cloud Peak Center Lanes and Games, located at 1520 Coffeen Avenue in Sheridan. Stop in today to check out their amazing new arcade and prize counter, offering games and prizes for all ages and skill levels. From their full-service lounge to bowling alley and arcade, there is something for everyone. Cloud Peak Center Lanes and Games. Stop in today.
I'm Floyd Whiting.
I'm DB Cooper.
I'm not DB Cooper.
I was going to say, who is DB Cooper in this room? Maybe Whiting, I guess.
Could be DB Cooper. So, DB, or Dan Cooper, hijacked flight number 305, which was a Boeing 727 aircraft, on November 24th of 1971. During the flight from Portland to Oregon to Seattle, Washington, Cooper told a flight attendant that he had a boom boom, and he demanded $200,000, equivalent to approximately $1.5 million in today's money, and 4 parachutes upon landing in Seattle. After releasing the passengers in Seattle, Cooper instructed the flight crew to refuel and begin a second flight to Mexico City, with a refueling stop in Reno, Nevada. About 30 minutes after taking off from Seattle, Cooper opened the aircraft's aft door, deployed the staircase, and parachuted into the night and into one of America's greatest mysteries. Now, when it comes to D.B. Cooper, Sisson and I actually have done a show on this because it's one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in the United States.
But it was not a Jackalopes, just to clarify.
No, it wasn't a Jackalope show. This was on another show that we were doing. But in 1980, a very small portion of the ransom money was found along the banks of the Columbia near Vancouver, Washington. The discovery of this money renewed public interest in that mystery, but it actually never yielded any other information about Cooper's identity or his fate. The remaining money has never been recovered. For 45 years after the hijacking, the FBI maintained an active investigation and built an extensive case file. But ultimately, they never reached any definitive conclusions. So the crime remains the only documented unsolved case of air piracy in commercial aviation. The FBI speculates that Cooper actually did not survive his jump for several reasons. There was inclement forecasted weather, Cooper's lack of proper skydiving equipment, and where he is believed to have landed was pretty heavily forested terrain, pretty rough places. And they don't know if he actually knew the area. So if you fall into a forest, especially some of these forests in the Great Northwest Territories, those things can go on for hundreds and hundreds of miles without a city, without life at all. Even here in the state of Wyoming, I couldn't imagine getting lost in a forest and not knowing where I was. Because it doesn't matter which direction you walk.
Yeah.
You got as much shot to reach a town as anything.
Yep.
My wisest move would probably be find water and follow it down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the best way to find a town.
But see, that starts my whole thing of what the hell good is the FBI? Because in one of the gals, Tina Mucklow, was one of the flight attendants, and he demanded that she sit next to him for the duration of this trip. And she said Cooper appeared familiar with the local terrain because as he looked out the window, he remarked, "Oh, that looks like Tacoma down there." Mm-hmm. And it was. And then as the aircraft was flying further, and he had said that he wanted the parachutes, he was told that they were coming from McCord Air Force Base, which he said is only 20-minute drive from SeaTac. And then he had all of these different things, and we'll get into some of this later. But it's like the FBI's like, we investigated and talked to 800 different people. I'm like, clearly you were asking what they had for lunch, because like there's all this stuff that points to he totally probably survived.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, wow, there's no way he could have survived.
Well, and if you really think about it, when you see a city from the air,
Yeah, you don't.
it's unless there's like, oh, that's the Space Needle.
Right.
Oh, that's the Luxor or whatever. Unless there's key
Details.
and landmarks.
Yeah.
It could be in any city.
Bug tussle.
Unless you've seen it from the air.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
If you've seen it from the air at night or during dusk, then you'd be like, oh, I've flown over this. And I'm sure, he's not going to say that. He's
Right.
just going to say, looks like Tacoma.
Listen, my favorite theory is that he did just like do all this work and then just died.
And then he's like dangling in a tree somewhere.
He's like, okay, let's do this. And it just did.
There's just a skeleton dangling.
Yes,
Wind
exactly.
chimes.
Still wearing the
Exactly.
sunglasses. Oh God, that'd be funny.
I
wouldn't
just
it?
think I think that's the funniest theory.
You don't think DB made it out? You honestly think he died?
No, it's my favorite theory,
Yeah.
but I do think he made it out.
And there's two things that are kind of my theories. Number one, because it would come out much later that the FBI did not have the weather patterns correct, and they were searching the wrong area for
Again.
a long, long time.
What good are they?
Right? But so you search the wrong area for what you think you're going to come across a body or maybe the parachute.
The parachute, yeah.
Now, a lot of people might wonder, why did he request 4? Now, you got to keep in mind, you've hijacked this plane. They landed to refuel, and he said, give me 4 parachutes. That way, the law enforcement thought he's taking hostages.
Right.
with
He's going to
him.
force somebody to jump with
So
him.
we can't make these parachutes not workable.
Right.
Hoping to make him fall out of the air, right? Because they're like, well, who knows who's going to get what parachute, so we can't sabotage one. That's why he did that. That way he knew one of these, none of these are going to be sabotaged.
Right.
I could take any of them and go. That stuff, that nylon, I mean, I don't know what it was made of by the time in the 70s, but I imagine it was a synthetic material.
Yeah, probably.
So that would mean that it would last quite a while in the weather. It would persist for quite some time, and still be out there. Do I think that it's out there now? No. But the other thing for me was once the FBI realized that they were searching in the wrong area, an investigator came along who was basically like, you guys kind of botched this. I'm taking it over. I'm going to start looking at this. And he figured if he landed in a tree or something like that, it was probably around Mount St. Helens. And if you've never seen the pictures of Mount St. Helens put together of that eruption in 1980,
The before and after. Yeah.
it is tough to think about an entire mountain losing one whole side. And even those pictures don't really give you the scope and the scale of that massive event. Imagine a mountainside just blowing away. And so
That would remove some evidence.
that would remove some evidence.
Yeah.
So if he was there, if this investigator was right, he did say later on, it may have gotten blown away. If there was
Right.
any parachute left, if there was like a
Anything,
bag of money just blowing in the wind, it's all gone now. So if he did pass before he landed, or landed and couldn't get out, didn't know what the hell to do, which why would you do that? Then he's probably way gone, and there's no evidence that we're ever going to be able to find ever again, and it's been gone since 1980, which It's 44 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's toast.
No, it's not.
Well, the
Sorry,
thing is,
buddy.
like,
Yeah.
if their guess is about his age, which they thought like mid 40s somewhere, I mean, he'd be getting up to 90.
Oh, he'd be way old. But
yeah, and
I
if he was
can-
a smoker, like he apparently was, then that's really getting up there for a smoker.
Yeah,
So.
especially back then.
Yeah.
I mean, you always did stuff with a cigarette in your mouth. So there's been some people who've come forward and actually said that they were DB Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
Aaron, did you find any of those people?
Well, it's just interesting because eyewitnesses describe Cooper, white male, mid 40s, dark hair, dark brown eyes, wearing black or brown business suit, white shirt, thin black clip-on tie.
Yes, that's why I wore my tuxedo T-shirt.
That's right.
I don't have a clip on, but
Keeping it classy.
Yeah.
A black raincoat, brown shoes, carrying a briefcase and a paper bag. I want to know what was in the paper bag.
yeah,
Because nobody
goggles,
ever really right.
a helmet.
Booze.
So
Was it
A
booze?
little lunch.
well, a detail that not many people know is once aboard the plane, he ordered a bourbon and soda.
Yep.
Which
But-
tells me he was a sophisticate, a gentleman.
But he spilled it.
Sophisticate.
Didn't he spill it and then not ask for another one?
He
though?
did spill it, not ask for another
Yeah.
one, which I thought was super odd.
He was shy.
Actually, he didn't want to impose.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I don't want to put
I've got my
these
list
people
of
to
demands,
too much
but-
trouble.
yeah.
Right.
I'm about to ruin their goddamn life. So.
One of the people actually said that he was rather nice and was never cruel or nasty during the whole entirety of the thing. Now, he was getting agitated sometimes.
Yeah, he did get agitated when they
But-
were taking too long to refuel.
Yeah.
Right. So then again, an unidentified cowboy guy, because during this whole thing, Cooper's like, this flight attendant's staying with me. It was kind of his collateral, I guess, on the flight because he had his bomb, which was just a ratty old briefcase with a couple of cylinders in it that she thought was maybe dynamite and like a cord between. It sounded like some janky, like
And I don't think
something
we
you
ever...
order from Acme on the
Yeah,
cartoon.
yeah, right. It's got a picture of the coyote on the front. Says boom.
And in this paper bag, I have a giant anvil.
That's the backup plan.
Right.
Well, that's the twist. He opens up the ripcord and there's an anvil up there. It's-
Oh,
nice.
God, that
Yeah.
would have been
Perfect.
funny.
So this cowboy guy comes back because he's bored and he wants a magazine. So he's talking to DB and the flight attendant. The FBI never questioned this guy. I mean, this guy had a conversation with him. They interviewed 800 people. They never talked to this guy.
Never talked to Cowboy.
No.
The
you mean just
report
like-
that
What
I've
are you
got
doing?
talked about Cowboy too.
Could you imagine that he's just like, God, I'm bored. What a magazine. I'm like, I'm not bored.
yeah,
I'm
right.
terrified.
Yeah.
So we'll get into some of the current findings. But a couple of the things that really intrigued me the most about this was 1972. Major upgrades to security measures were made to airports and commercial aviation because metal detectors were installed, baggage inspection became mandatory, and passengers who paid cash for tickets on the day of the departure had additional scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you're telling me up until 1972, I could roll into the airport, no ID, pay cash for a flight, write my name on the ticket, walk in through no metal detectors,
With probably no ID.
Yep.
no ID, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Trusting lot they were back then.
Yes.
Well, you look at the 727
Yes.
itself. The air stair could be opened while the plane was
Well, it
in
was
flight
flying.
Yes.
from somebody in the back.
Yeah.
And it couldn't be overridden by the people in the cockpit.
Right.
So, I mean, how...
I mean, I'm
No.
like, what kind of troglodyte druids were we before D.B. Cooper? Like...
Just a greyhound in the sky back then, buddy.
Honest
That's
to
all
God.
it was. Just a greyhound in the
I
sky.
just blew my mind. But so...
Well, and smoking.
Oh,
Yeah.
Smoking
yeah.
outside.
That was
I'm
like,
like,
till
that's
the
just
late
crazy.
80s,
Yeah,
wasn't
because
it?
when I was growing up and we'd go somewhere, there still was smoking on planes.
Yeah.
There were still some
Wow.
airplanes when I
That's insane.
got in the service.
With the ashtray.
The ashtray
Yeah.
on the handrail. And
And
I
there
was
was still
like,
gum in
no
it.
way. Yeah.
That might be good. So this all kind of leads up to, so they never solved it. They don't know who the guy was. Nobody, off of the sketches, and I sent Grant a little photo of this. Off of the sketches, they kind of had an idea of who this guy might be. But in 2020, a parachute was found on the property of a family connected to a prime suspect in the case. It belonged to Richard Floyd McCoy II, the real McCoy. And it was carefully stored in his deceased mother's storage until very recently. McCoy had long been one of the FBI's leading suspects after a successful pulling off of identical but better executed hijacking in Utah 5 months prior to this one.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Mm-hmm.
So this rig that they found, they said was literally 1 in a billion because it matched, serial numbers of like where these came from, because they got the front rigs, I think, from a stunt pilot, and the back rigs for
the front rigs weren't readily available. It took a while to get them.
And the back rigs, I think, were military issue, but the base that they came from had done certain things where they would cut one line and insert a different D-ring, whatever, and this matched perfectly to one of those. So McCoy's children, Shantae and Richard III, Rick, agreed with this guy, Grider, who is a YouTube guy who did nothing for decades but investigate D.B. Cooper. And he was the one that finally was like, yeah, you guys have this completely wrong, FBI. Let me tell you the real story. So they show up to the McCoy property, which was, I think, in North Carolina, and also found a skydiving logbook that aligned with the time and or the timeline for both of the hijackings, which provided another vital piece to the puzzle, they said. Again, what's the FBI doing? Like, this guy's a YouTube guy figuring it out, and the FBI was like, really? Huh.
But I mean, like, they sit here and talk about how much resources and stuff, because they didn't close the case. They suspended the case. They suspended the case in 2016, saying that they just couldn't put any more resources on it.
Right.
What resources were devoted to this?
Well, what's funny is John F. Fox Jr. was the dedicated D.B. Cooper case historian, and he said that he ruled out McCoy as a viable candidate in multiple TV interviews. Now, is that to throw McCoy off the track?
Right.
Was that like
flub up because you think I'm not watching
it wasn't him. It couldn't have been him.
Well, if I remember right, didn't the flight attendant and a few others look at McCoy and say, no, that's not the guy?
Yeah. But,
well, and see, that's the thing. Like, a lineup, first off, imagine the stress that you're actually under. But they were with DB for a long time.
Right.
So it's not like, it's a flash of his face. She sat next to him for how long?
Oh, for hours and hours.
Talked to him.
Yes.
So if she were to look at me and say, Floyd, that's not the guy.
Yeah.
I would absolutely believe her.
Did they ever do like a sketch with her?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they revised the sketches based on, because the first one they said his face was too narrow and a few things like that. And they talked to these people that were with him and they said, no, that's not him. So they revised it, and then they revised it again. I think it's like the third revision that they said was actually the close one.
Fairly close to him.
What's even crazier, and it just keeps getting crazier, if D.B. Cooper was McCoy, it turns out that Richard McCoy was actually a criminal justice student at Brigham Young University, studying after serving 2 tours of duty in Vietnam as a highly decorated Green Beret.
He would know how to jump out of a plane.
And helicopter pilot.
Yep.
He was an active member of the Utah National Guard, so he easily could have survived.
Yeah. Not only could he have jumped out of that plane, but if he was a beret, they know, like, you can drop me anywhere in the world. If I was a beret, you can drop those guys anywhere in the world,
and they'll survive.
They can survive.
But if he was a beret, wouldn't he have known to be a little more prepared than just wearing like a dress shirt and loafers?
Unless he realized that along the way, I'll get the parachutes from here, and more than likely they'll go there to get them, and I'll drop here in this general area. I'll walk out. I mean, no.
Yeah,
I know that I glorify Green Berets a lot, but they literally could pull this off with absolutely no.
Right, but why take the risk? Why not make it so you have a little better chances of surviving it?
Well, besides
for the thrill.
Well, just so I can show that I did it.
Yeah.
Besides the money, exactly. the thrill.
Yep.
Could I do this? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking
Could
I'd like get some boots or something that would help me survive the landing a little better, especially if you're doing it at night. You don't know where the terrain is because it's dark and it's winter, and I think you would prepare a little bit. I mean, you could like get a helmet or goggles or something, which maybe that's what's in the bag.
Right.
But
I
Yeah.
don't know, man.
Because I was like, maybe he is more prepared than we know. Like maybe he has things on him that nobody knew
because
about.
nobody actually saw him jump out of the plane.
Yeah.
So we don't know what he was wearing when that happened.
And we can't interview McCoy because he's passed away.
Right.
He died in like
However-
74, I think.
Correct.
Pretty
We're gonna get
early.
to
I
that.
mean,
So his daughter, Shantae, who lives in southwestern Wyoming,
right on.
Ooh.
has agreed to do a DNA test if they wanted to exhume his body.
Yeah.
The FBI has not reached out to her.
Well, here's another thing
What are
too.
you guys doing?
Here's another thing too. Like all the evidence, the fingerprints and stuff. We don't know that any of those fingerprints are his.
Right.
There's
Could
stuff
be
on the
anybody's.
tie, but we don't know that that was his either because they have nothing to match it to.
Yeah.
Right. So this is crazy too. Other weird facts about McCoy was he first caught the agency's attention after pulling off a near copycat hijacking 5 months earlier.
Yep.
In 1972, McCoy leapt out of a United Airlines flight over Provo, Utah, after demanding $500,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, threatening the crew with an inert hand grenade and an empty gun, while disguised in a wig, fake mustache, and mirrored sunglasses. So when they went to investigate this, he was maintaining his innocence. He's like, it wasn't me. They show up to his home and raid the joint and find a bunch of evidence for it. They had no search warrant, and they had to throw it out.
Oh my God,
really?
So when
Rough.
This guy may have committed 2 of the greatest air piracy heists in human history,
right,
and they didn't have a warrant to search his place.
right,
That's why you
so
wait
they
for
had
the
to throw it
warrant.
out. So because of that, when people were saying it was him, they were super scared about pinning the DB Cooper on him because they feared the case would be thrown out in court because they're just looking at this guy like, well, he did this one, it must be him.
My lawyer, I get a good lawyer. I could argue that you're just trying to find someone to pin this on.
Show me the man, I'll show you the crime.
Yep. You've got absolutely no evidence, and they didn't.
Yep.
They didn't. Besides speculation.
So that was in April of 72. He pulled off this hijacking. He pulled off another one using the alias James Johnson. Boarded a United Airlines flight 885. Boarded the plane. Had 85 passengers. Crew 6. Captain. Blah blah blah. Again, aft stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And he escaped by doing the same thing, parachuting. Blah blah blah. When the police investigated this, following a tip from a motorist that had seen a driver that had picked McCoy up hitchhiking at a fast food restaurant, McCoy was wearing a jumpsuit and carrying
which
a
restaurant?
duffel bag. Right.
DB Cooper's.
I want
Right.
to know.
He also described to an acquaintance how easy it would be to carry out such a hijacking. Following fingerprint and handwriting analysis was done that matched, McCoy was arrested 2 days after the hijacking. He was on National Guard duty, flying one of the helicopters involved in the search for the hijacker.
Oh my God! Can you imagine that, man? I'd just be,
flying around
I'd be
going,
like, this
I
is-
bet that's
I'm
not the
having a great
place.
day, guys. I don't know about you, but I can search this mountain all day.
So they go to his house. FBI agents found a jumpsuit, duffel bag filled with cash totaling $499,970. So he had spent $30.
Yeah, got to get a burger on the way.
Yeah. So he claims his innocence. On and
That
on.
it had to be more than a burger, right?
Back then, yeah, because they were like a nickel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Burger and some shoes.
They actually convict him of the hijacking, and he receives a 45-year sentence. Once incarcerated at the federal penitentiary in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, McCoy used his access to the prison's dental office to fashion a fake handgun out of dental paste. He and a crew of convicts then commandeered a garbage truck, crashed it through the main prison gate, and escaped. 3 months later, the FBI located McCoy in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and on November 9th, 1974, McCoy walked into his home, was met by the FBI agents, who he fired at and they shot and killed him.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, I mean, it's not
It was
like,
the thrill, man.
I'm gonna do
it was
this.
the thrill. It wasn't the money.
Yeah, I'm going to do this one time. And then you get away with it.
But
and
then
you're
you
like,
love it.
I'm going to do this again.
Well, this
It's
is
almost like a cooler version of Point Break.
and obviously he was the
Which isn't
Green
saying
Beret,
much.
right?
What's that?
He was the Green Beret.
Yes. Yeah.
So he did this for the challenge and the thrill. I'll bet he, somewhere down the line, he'd seen some action and he got addicted to that. And they have a different mindset.
Right.
This is an organization that topples governments.
Right.
They're a different type of human being.
100%. But these are the highlights. There's a lot of other whacked out crap in this.
I can see. Yeah,
they were living.
I'll bet you he was a fighter. I'll bet
I'm
he
sure.
loved to fight.
Probably. But then you see the picture of him and you're like, really?
Yeah.
This guy?
Pretty unassuming looking guy.
Yeah, unassuming.
But that's the thing. Like the crew of the plane said, that's not him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
maybe he just had ways to.
Maybe
You don't know.
I think it's also likely that this was a copycat, though. He's like, I could do that and do it better.
But see, that's
Possibly.
the thing, is because the one 5 months prior, they were like, flawless.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah.
And then this guy just shows up and goes, well, I can do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you? Did you? Were you him?
And that's a
don't
good
know.
point. That could have really been the same situation. Like this McCoy guy, he pulls one off. Somebody reads it in a newspaper and they're, maybe they work for the airline. Maybe they were a mechanic.
Yeah.
Whoever DB Cooper was, he understood how to get that door open.
He had better than average knowledge about quite a few things.
He understood enough that you need to start looking in that, and I'm sure they did.
Well, the crazy thing about it, though, too, and again, what the hell is the FBI doing? But like the family would report when they were interviewing him, like, well, they never had any money, like none.
Yeah.
But then shortly after the DB Cooper thing, they were coming out to see him, and like money didn't seem to be an issue. And it's like, how are you not putting this together?
Yeah, well, the money that was supplied to him was reserved for that purpose. The bank had money.
Every single serial number.
Yeah,
was
so it was
written
all
down.
documented. They knew every bill of that.
See, and that's the part that gets me, is he's so smart, right? That he can pull off the grandest air heist in human history. Yet they brought him the bag of money for him to inspect it, which he actually offered when the flight attendant joked, "Can I have some?" He gave her a stack, and she's like, "I can't take tips. It's against corporate policy." You're like, oh my god,
What a sweet girl.
Be like, no, this one's mine. It was a tip from DB.
Yeah, these are
Yeah.
extenuating circumstances.
Can you imagine if you
I'd
had
keep
that?
it. I'd keep it. I'd be like, you are prying this out of my cold, dead hands.
Right?
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, for being so smart, like if you're going to rob, not that I condone robbing banks, but if you're going to, small, non-sequential, no die packs, blah, blah, blah. We've all seen movies, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like in those movies, those guys are in and out in like a couple minutes because they're just the drawers.
Right.
I don't care about the safe.
All of the money, a majority of the money, it was all 20s. Started with an L serial number, which indicates San Francisco. So pretty easily traceable. I mean, if you're really looking for it and somebody's, your bill's, $100, or you go buy a car for cash and they're all L20s.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and, and none of the money other than the 5,000 or so that was found in the river
Was ever recovered.
was ever found.
No.
That's never been found.
No.
So, I mean, there is like a very serious high probability that it's buried under what's left of Mount St. Helens.
Yeah.
Either that or,
Because it just hadn't showed up.
it'd take you a hot minute to do it, but you tear the corner off, you go to the bank, you're like, this one's got a torn corner, can I change it? And they will. But my God, I mean, you would think that if it were unless it's still buried on the family property or somewhere that.
And the level of sophistication when it comes to like laundering it, not that people didn't know how to do that back then. But again, what am I going to do with these serial numbers?
Yeah. And that's a lot of 20s to do that too.
No matter who gets it, I can't do anything with it.
But that's the thing is, I mean, like you could, if you knew some nefarious person, you're like, okay, I got $200,000 here. You give me 180, it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
And then they move it to Mexico.
Well, and I did think about that. What if I transported to South America?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Because nobody down there is, I mean, yes, Interpol, and they're probably looking for it no matter where it shows up.
Yeah, but also
But-
at that time period, I don't think it was as
the level of
sophisticated
communication just
as it
wasn't
was
there.
now. Yeah. Kind of like how you could probably assume any identity you wanted
Yeah.
at
Back-
one point.
yeah.
Well, then
because-
he originally wanted to go to Mexico City. That was
Right.
the original
Yeah, it was
destination.
the
Yeah.
stop.
But
Yeah.
then he specified a certain flight configuration that meant they had to stop and refuel.
Well, so that became the issue was he refueled. He wanted to refuel in SeaTac, but then he wanted to fly at 10,000 feet because you don't have to pressurize the cabin, and he wanted to fly as fast as it would go without stalling it, which at that time was 118 miles an hour.
well, he
which I'm
specified flaps 15 degrees.
Yes.
which slowed everything down.
right. So they were like, well, if we do that, we're not making it to Mexico City. We're going to have to stop in Reno, Nevada. So
You're
then he was
using
like,
up way
fine.
too much fuel.
So
Yeah.
all of those little pieces of that, though, indicates he has knowledge
Aviation
of flight.
knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And knowing
But
that-
not. I don't think not to the level where he was like an experienced pilot though. But more than like the average person would know.
Yeah.
Right.
Because he also wanted them to take off with the stairs extended, which they couldn't do.
Right.
And a pilot of the 727 would know that.
And this was
But they did land with him down.
Yeah, and damage them when they did.
Yeah.
it had to, right? They couldn't get it back
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, they couldn't get him up.
This was in the age long before the internet. So that type of knowledge would have had to have been accumulated from
Some
a
sort of
textbook, a flight manual, something, and even then wasn't widely available. It's you can't just go into a bookstore back then and be like, I want a book on this plane.
user manual for a 730.
No, yeah, you're not going to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not a reality. Nowadays, you could look up just about anything, but yeah, back then, just having that knowledge means that you would have had to have been part of that world somehow.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
speculation that he was like a CIA person because they were using those planes to drop things over Vietnam. And if he was
And
like
he
a
had 2 tours in Vietnam.
yeah, and if he was like a cargo loader, maybe. I mean, those guys wear reserve chutes. They're not like expert, paratroop level, but
Right.
he would have knowledge of that.
And he would know how to use it. He would know, like in an emergency situation. So that's enough that, if you're going to take that chance, you just mitigate the safety risks up, and up. And you're like, yeah, I could pull this off.
So I have a question. Earlier, someone said that no one saw him actually jump,
No,
No, because the
but
flight
nobody saw him
attendant-
out there even.
no.
No, because the flight attendant had said he wanted her to stay with him. And she was scared of getting sucked out the back of the plane. Well, it wasn't pressurized, so she wasn't going to get sucked out of the plane. But he was like, okay, fine. Go into the cockpit, but close the drape between first class and coach. So they don't know when he jumped out.
They just know their ears did pop.
Well,
Their ears popped when they
yeah.
dropped the thing, but that wasn't necessarily indicative of that's when he went.
No,
they
yeah.
felt
He could have
some
hung
just
out
when
for
he
another
opened it
20
up.
minutes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think they felt some sort of oscillation or something from like the stair, like him leaping off. They figured that's kind of what it was, and I think, like in some experiment, they recreated that, had a person jump off, and what they felt was similar to that. So
Okay.
they had an
I don't
idea
know,
of
though.
roughly when he bailed. But
Because
no one
I
actually
was
saw it.
curious if he somehow could have stayed on the plane.
Yeah, that's a great theory too.
Well, so when they landed,
hmm
they didn't approach the plane because they didn't know if he was still on there with a bomb.
Well,
Well,
bomb.
yeah, they weren't totally sure he did take that bomb with him or not.
right.
And I mean,
And-
think about it this way: if everyone's in a panic getting off of the plane when they do get off, he could easily slip into that. Like he could have had a change of clothes somewhere, changed his clothes
In the paper
and,
sack.
and slipped into the panic.
Or just slipped off to the side, especially if he was a technician or a Green Beret.
Well, I saw a theory somewhere where it
But
wasn't
then how
just
did the
him.
money get down along the
Through
riverbank?
it. I mean, he opened
You
it.
could toss it out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
He
it's
he
true.
opened up.
That's true.
Yeah.
Or you
The
just toss a
plane.
little bit out.
Yeah.
$5 grand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's theories like if he had an accomplice or so or more on the plane,
Mhm.
you could do something like that and have him sneak off when they get all the hostages off.
You dress like this, I'll dress like a cowboy, and we'll
Yeah.
do this.
But
Right.
in order for that to happen, I think the entire flight crew would have to be in on it because their story after they get all the hostages off and it's just him left, I think they'd all have to be on it for that story to be told.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's not a significant enough amount of money to spread that out over the 6 crew.
No, when I got a great career.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's what, about in today's money, maybe $1 million or something?
1.5.
Well, it was 1.5 total. So if you spread that out over 7 people, I mean,
well, that and
worth
again,
it?
I wouldn't think a lot of those people would be into that.
No.
Right.
No.
They'd be like, no.
Well, and I mean, if they were in on it, then they could have done a lot more than what they did.
Yeah.
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and the last thing she said she saw was DB Cooper as she was closing the blinds, like he had asked her to, tying money to his body.
Yeah.
Because they delivered the money to him, and I can't remember. Oh, he wanted it in a rucksack.
Yeah.
Again, there's a military link. Did he say backpack or rucksack?
Right.
A civilian would have said, give me a backpack. A military member would say, I want it in a rucksack. It's two very, like, depending on how people say certain words, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, only other military members would actually hear that kind of stuff.
Or did he call it a bag and he's a Minnesotan?
Right. Well,
Grab a big.
And was that relayed through somebody?
Yeah, that would give it away.
Exactly.
Because I think there's something about him asking for American currency, but they're not exactly sure that that's specifically what he said. That was relayed through the captain or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, because the captain was on the radio and he was like literally relaying all the demands. The last thing that they heard from DB was when the door opened and the cabin pressure changed and everything. The captain asked him, do you need help? He sent back a one-word response, no.
Right.
So
he didn't need help.
He didn't need help.
So I honestly believe that this McCoy is DB Cooper. That this parachute is the parachute. But the fact that the kids have even said, yeah, we'll submit to DNA tests if you want to go exhume the old man. They haven't done shit.
I definitely think it's worth doing.
I do too.
Well, so here's my thing. Do they have DB Cooper's DNA on file?
They don't know for sure.
They don't know, but if
it matches some of that,
see,
right.
that's
if it matches, it matches.
Then he was there.
This guy did commit another hijacking and escape prison.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I guess
because we know that's my dad.
Right.
We know McCoy's my father.
Right. But
you have to have DNA from that plane.
Yeah, if it matches DNA from the plane, then that means the guy was there.
Yeah.
And they've got the tie.
But here's the thing. How good was DNA
circumstantial,
in 1971?
It wasn't. There was no DNA anything in 1970.
And how many hands has it been passed through?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, they've lost a lot of the
custody, kind of deal.
But I will say, like, there has been some great cases where a forward-thinking officer took fried chicken out of the garbage of a robbery and a murder, and he put that fried chicken in a bag. And he literally told himself...
Had it for lunch later.
But he told himself, I can't do it now, but maybe one day I'll be able to figure out who ate that chicken.
And that happens a lot of the time.
And he solved a murder by doing that because later, years, like over a decade later, DNA came along.
So maybe if they could have
and they were like, dig that chicken out, and they found their murderer.
Dig a cigarette butt out of the little ashtray.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is they had those, and somehow those got lost.
Yeah. Again.
They always get lost, don't they?
That is the best DNA evidence you would have.
Yeah, cigarette butt?
Yeah. I mean, because that was in his mouth.
Oh, my gosh.
The tie, who knows who touched that and all that stuff. But
you got spit all over your cigarette butts back in the day?
Yeah, but we don't have that evidence. So.
But now it's gone. Yeah. So even if you're willing to submit to a DNA test, the hell am I going to find out?
I want to know who the guy is. Because you know that there's a guy, and he sits behind the cage, and he's like, what do you want to see in the evidence room? And they're like, I want to see the cigarette butts from DB Cooper and the moon landing tapes. And he's like, we lost both of them.
Yeah. Those are gone. Like, way gone.
That guy probably needs fired.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
He's just got him at his house. He's like, I like these things.
He's got
black market.
Cool
See,
museum.
That's another thing. They could be in the black market. Someone could have that stuff.
That's so true.
Someone could have that stuff. There could have been a crooked individual in there who's just like, what a great piece of American history.
Yeah.
Because other than that, where the hell did they go?
Right.
It's not like someone's going to be crawling around the crawl space one day and they're like, oh,
Found him.
there he is on the moon. There it is. All the footage was right here in this dusty crawl space the whole time. That's not reality.
Right.
No.
Someone, somewhere has those tapes. Someone, somewhere has those cigarette butts.
Yeah.
You don't, unless, someone
Unless
was
it
walking
got
around.
damaged somehow, like a fire.
Yeah,
or
or
things
Or
like
the
that.
cigarette butts,
Say
I could see
Helen's.
someone coming along being like, oh, that's an old case. And these are just cigarette butts in the trash.
Right.
You shouldn't throw away anything.
Yeah.
Not if you're working
Unless
in the
you
FBI
know, but
evidence
it's some
file.
intern, he doesn't know. He's like, "Oh, I'm cleaning it out. No one's giving me instruction. I'll just throw it away."
I'm doing work.
I'm sure
I'm doing
that
so
there's
good. They're gonna promote me in
great
no
people
time.
at the FBI. Don't get me wrong. I'm ragging on them in this, going, "What the hell are you guys doing?" Because a lot of this pointed to, "What the hell are you guys doing?"
Well, and I think a lot of them, if by chance someone in the FBI, which I'm, hopefully they're watching us.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, you're on a list already.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You're already on that list.
Always listening.
But
I go home. I'm like, dee. Oh,
a lot of things have become, more sophisticated through the years.
Mm-hmm.
Processes become, more refined and better. And I'm sure, someone sitting in the FBI is like, yeah, man, they botched this one up, But
I mean, almost to like Keystone Cop level in some of this, though.
or it just
really.
seems like you did a lot of interviewing, but you didn't find the cowboy. You didn't talk to every single individual who
Right.
traded words with this man.
Well, and
That
part of
seems
me
odd.
thinks that they didn't collect this evidence of the cigarette butts in the first place, and they had to be like, "Well, we just
That's it.
Yeah,
Got
they
lost.
just never had it. Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
and
because
maybe-
how does
Because
it get lost
what would
like
I have
that?
known then?
Yeah.
Cigarette butt.
Also, are you storing them all together? Can't you separate them out? So if one gets lost, the other
Yeah.
one's not lost.
No, this pouch is the cigarette butt pouch.
It's
We
the
don't have the
cigarette
budget
butt
for multiple
pouch.
pouches.
I drew a picture on
I
it.
only have one Ziploc left, guys.
Yeah.
Put
You
'em
got to
all in
make a
here.
decision.
Well, and something else is like, how accurate is that sketch? Like, all these suspects, like the prominent ones, you look at these guys, they look nothing like each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they all match the description. So
Right.
that's a wide open
Well,
possibility.
an eyewitness testimony is, consistently.
Oh my god!
Scrutinized.
To this day, it drives me nuts that we can still convict people on the human memory because
Yes.
the human memory is horrible. You're going
Especially in
through
a panic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're going through a traumatic
Stressful
event.
situations, yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
your vision, your memory isn't going to work the way it's constantly doing it, and you see this individual, even if it is for like 3 to 4 hours, try to think back on a time that you spent 3 to 4 hours with someone in a high stress situation and then put them in a lineup and tell me days later that you can identify.
Yeah, and especially if it's like a rather average looking person wearing sunglasses.
Yeah, I'll bet you money that percentage of people who get that right would be pretty low.
See,
I'd
and
imagine.
I think it really depends on the person's memory and how it handles stress because, some people are just going to repress it completely. They're like, I don't know anything
Yeah.
about
I
about
don't
what that
remember
man looks
anything at
like.
all.
But then there's other people that literally can just pick out every single detail.
Yeah, it's like burned
Photographic
into the
memory
brain.
Yeah.
people
Wow.
scare me. Robots.
I just miss the days when I could show up, buy a one-way ticket for cash with no ID.
People like DB Cooper
Yeah.
ruin that for
Yeah,
you.
thanks, Coop.
I could bring my big shampoo on the carry-on.
Yeah,
that-
And now
Yeah.
they're like, well, pretty much get rid of most of your clothing, stand in the thing.
One of my
We're gonna
favorite.
scrutinize everything in
Gosh,
your suitcase.
Do you
Thanks,
remember
DB Cooper.
the first time I came and saw Floyd? Because, he flew me out. And, for the people who don't know, Floyd and I were long distance for 2 years. So
Long time.
the first time we met, he flew me out. And when I was going home, they stopped me in Casper Airport. And for people who don't know what Casper Airport looks like, it has a gift shop and a restaurant.
Yeah.
That's
Casper, Air
it.
Care, Casper Airport Hair Care and Tire Center.
Yes. So TSA is like nothing. I'm the only one in it. They start going through everything I
They
have.
needed something to do.
Yeah.
Yes, and so like, and I was wearing just like a flowy skirt, nothing, but they're like in there. Oh yeah, they're inspecting in there, and I'm like, oh god.
Yeah.
And Floyd's just watching me this whole time, and I'm like so embarrassed. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I was like, guys.
Yeah, they dug
I
through my
don't-
entire suitcase.
You've been randomly flagged for the full
Yeah,
inspection.
the only person in the airport.
Yeah. We call this treatment the DB Cooper.
One of my favorite
Getting the
things
DB Cooper
about
treatment
that
today.
is how Boeing solved the problem of the stairs being able to be opened while it was in
They
flight.
can't now, right?
Yeah, they solved it by attaching a little metal flap. It's on a spring, and when the plane is in flight, the air pressure pushes that flap over, and it like blocks the door.
And it can't open up.
And they call it the Cooper vein.
The Cooper
they
vein.
do.
It's
Oh, wow.
That's the greatest little fix to that problem.
It's just, I think about how someone could get away with not just this crime, but so many others back in the day before, electronic this and monitoring that. And it makes me wonder, and not on the crime side, but how much of our information is so readily available now. And what, like, one of these old crotchety men from back then would say, like, they would look at us and they'd say, you are under an authoritarian monitoring government.
Right.
You can't go anywhere without being tracked. You can't do this without being...
That's a whole nother show.
Yeah.
No, it is.
That's a
But I mean,
whole
like,
nother
you think
show.
about it, man, back in the day, like DB Cooper, you could just disappear.
Yeah.
No one...
I'm
No,
more
literally-
fascinated that people nowadays can still get away with stuff.
Oh, that's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
How
like,
do they do
how?
Yeah.
But he literally showed up, cash, ticket, wrote his name on it.
it? Mm-hmm.
A name.
A
Probably,
name.
probably not his.
Watch, it's actually his name.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be amazing if it
I'm
was.
Dan Cooper.
Dan.
Yeah.
John Doe. And nobody says anything.
No
They're
one
like,
would, yeah.
William Jespersenton.
The third.
I am Personington.
I'm plain
Jumper.
bag.
Yeah,
Plain bag.
Yeah.
I could do it. But even back then, nothing had happened yet. So,
right.
there was no DB Cooper. There was no 9/11.
But there had been hijackings. Like hijackings were pretty prevalent because they even said in 1972 they put all these things in place. Hijackings went down. No shit.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Dude walks onto the plane with a bomb. I can't even wear my shoes going through because some asshole tried to blow up his shoe.
Yeah.
Like one guy one time, and now everybody take your shoes
And now
off.
we're all taking our shoes off.
and walk through this
And the thing is,
grimy part of
even
the
with
airport.
all that,
Yeah.
you still hear all the stories about, well, they got this gun onto this flight.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that stuff gets through all the time.
All the
even
Which
with
drives
those.
me nuts, and how many criminals has the TSA managed to get?
Pretty much zero, I think.
I
Yeah,
do love
that's zero.
seeing the bomb dogs in the.
I do too.
Airport.
I
Yeah.
do. I
'Cause
like
they're
that.
working.
I don't.
They're working.
I was getting a little nervous.
Nah. In Minneapolis, they have them all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they have them
Right.
in Denver. all
Because
the
you
time, too.
just walk through, the dog, sniffs you.
I'll tell you what, though. What blows my mind is because they put you like through that square,
Yeah.
and then feed you out the other
Yep.
side, and the dogs just kind of walk around.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It never fails. Either the guy or whoever's in front of me or somebody behind me, the dog goes, and I'm like, oh God!
You're already on your knees with your hands behind your back.
I'm like, what do they have? Turns out they're just high.
They got a dog bone in their pocket.
Yeah.
Dave's not here, man.
Yeah, right. But it just it part of it was the discovery of like all of the crap that we didn't have. Like
Yeah.
walk onto the plane with a bomb. Like, really? And then just their realization of like, oh, hijackings went way down after we took away the ability to hijack. That's weird. And then just all of the weird nuances of the similarities of the hijackings, this guy, his background, all these things. And you're just like, exhume the body, see if he matches this, see if your recently discovered parachute matches perfectly with the serial numbers from that military installation, and they just pin it on the guy.
And then
close
just
the case.
call it good.
Yeah, well, he's long gone, and
I
so
don't.
Yeah,
well,
he's dead.
I don't know though. No, that wouldn't be good enough for me.
No?
That wouldn't be good enough for me.
I want the
Just-
cigarette butts.
I don't
Well,
like
Who's got the Ziploc?
See, and that's the thing. If you got me DNA,
Mhm.
then I'd be like,
You'd be
okay,
in.
yeah, there it is.
Yep.
There it is. Because now we got the parachute. We got him doing it more than once. You know, this was his MO, and now we got DNA. Boom. There's the case closed for me. But if you're gonna just do it to do it, so that the FBI can say we solved this.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. Take some personal pride.
Right.
You sure you did? Are you sure you did? Because the man isn't here to defend himself. So even though obviously he had no issue with committing crimes, and
Right.
he had no issue with it. I'm sure he'd be like, yeah, that's right. We're in the afterlife. He could be like, they even pinned DBs on me.
Yeah.
But that'd be his biggest complaint. But the idea that you're just going to do it to do it,
Well, and
especially this case.
the crazy
It's-
thing, too, is
no.
the
Any
kids. The kids
Any
were
case.
like, yeah, our dad was DB Cooper.
Well, and see,
And they didn't talk about it until after he died in the shootout.
yeah. Well, God, your dad died in a shootout, and someone's like, was he DB Cooper? Well, he did it all the time.
Yeah.
So
And he died in a shootout.
let's put one and one together.
And
you
it could
know?
be that unless he confided in them, they would just assume, oh yeah, it was probably him.
Right.
Well,
'cause-
there's been a couple deathbed confessions that they're DB Cooper.
Yeah, and
Right.
he's not one of them.
No, he wasn't.
No, and there was a guy in Florida who told his wife to go dig something up in the backyard, and when she went out there and dug it up, there was a box full of little trinkets and I want to say some money, but
I
I
would
couldn't find
love-
anything
Yeah.
on that.
to do a deathbed confession episode
That'd be fun.
where we all
Ooh.
find one.
Yeah.
I would love that.
And a lot of
like that.
people are just messing with you too. Like on your deathbed, you're going to say something and it's just going to spiral into who knows what after you're
Look,
gone.
man, I think I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
would just leave something so vague.
Yes.
Make him think that there's a treasure somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're like, no, people are just going to spend the rest of their
Oh my
lives
gosh.
looking for
Yeah.
nothing. You
But
know?
like the treasure episode that we did, there was a treasure.
There was a treasure
You
there,
know?
though.
Who knows?
That was real.
Yep.
Yeah. Or you get up there and it's like an old 1988 Transformer. You
Yeah.
know, he did say his prized possession.
Oh my gosh, it's a He-Man.
Like an old He-Man.
Yeah, it'd be an old He-Man.
Oh,
It's
it'd
still
be
in the
so
box.
funny.
It's worth
Castle
$200.
Grayskull. Oh.
Take it to a convention, man. Don't just throw that in the back.
We do have one that's brand new in box that was $200. So
We're not going to talk about that.
hey,
B&I.
I encouraged it. Don't even. I encouraged it.
I'm just saying. I promised
Because
myself
the
I
box
wouldn't, and
is
I did.
part of it. It lights
It is.
up.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It lights up.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. DB Cooper, I think, is one of those great American myths.
Mm.
And there's a couple reasons. Number one, DB did this without hurting anybody.
Right.
He didn't physically hurt anyone. He took money, and that was pretty much it, right? If he had hurt somebody, I think my attitude towards this entire story, myth and legend, would be different. Because I'd be like, screw him.
Hey,
You
and
know
he
what I
was
mean?
polite.
And he
if
was
I was
polite.
going through this and he was kind, I don't know. Maybe I would
There's-
just be like, can I get a magazine? I'm bored.
Right.
There's something about the charming, dashing rogue thief.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right.
We all love that. And we might not confess that we do, but Jack Sparrow, we love him. He was a pirate, you know.
he did kill a few people, though.
That
They
Disney
were collateral
Fox
damage.
of Robin Hood.
Robin
I
Hood.
loved him
Mm-hmm.
in ways I can't tell you because
But I mean,
he's a cartoon fox. I don't know why he looks like that.
we have this image. Though. Billy the Kid was a murderer.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I can sit here and tell you right now that Billy the Kid was probably a psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Butch
a
Cassidy,
legitimate
Sundance
serial
Kid.
killer
I mean-
psychopath.
Huh?
But we've got this cowboy thief image. Here's a local one. Butch Cassidy.
Yeah. Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid.
Butch
Jesse
Cassidy.
James.
Yep. The Sundance Kid. They did sometimes rob from the rich and give to the poor. Butch Cassidy helped a lot of people in Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got to talk to a man when I was in kindergarten. He came to my school and spoke. Butch Cassidy was in Star Valley all the time.
Right. Right.
He would
right,
hide
yeah.
out there because there's all the LDS families around there. And he came from an LDS family, so they hid their own. I'm sure half the people didn't know that he was a wanted outlaw because it's not like they had newspapers nationally.
Right.
He's just some nice young man, But it makes you a legend. And it makes you kind of intriguing. If you're just another nut job walking around stealing things from people and hurting them, I want you gone. But dashing little rogues, we need one every once in a while. We need this.
What's
This country.
the difference?
Needs.
I want to know what the difference is. Like, what's the difference between some dude just stealing all over the place
and buying crack?
Well, it's like
Charm.
It's like 50 Shades of Grey. If that was a trailer and the guy was poor, totally different scenario.
No one would want to go see that, right?
Everything else being exactly the same, those two things change. It's a whole different story.
Yep.
That is so true.
But we haven't had a good DB Cooper-ish type mystery in a long time.
But this one still lives on. Like every few years, something comes up that reinvigorates the
Oh
story.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, it falls out of kind of that 24-hour news cycle.
Well, we're never going to know, right? No.
And then all of a sudden, this YouTuber's like, I know where the parachute is. I can find it.
Yep.
And now
And he
people are
did.
back in.
And now here we are doing a show.
Yep.
We admire that. There's something very American about it, too. The outlaw.
Mm-hmm.
The dashing gentleman who rides into town and kind of, doesn't hurt anybody, but rustles a couple feathers.
Yeah. Well, especially in this case, if he did it just because he wanted to do it. Because the money was never spent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, did he just do it to do it?
I'll tell you what, man.
It wasn't spent to what we know.
Yeah.
That's one reason why I'm like, yeah, I could see like a Green Beret who goes through all this training, goes through, let's say, the war. You said he had
two tours in
Vietnam as a Green Beret. That man saw a lot of action. And when he got home, he's like, wow,
this is boring.
I'm going to do something with a little more pizzazz. And he rushes off and does this stuff.
Yeah. My personal opinion is that none of those suspects are the guy. I don't think they ever found him.
You don't think
No.
DB made it out?
I don't think so. I think the fact that there was some money still there, and it was, depending on where he jumped downstream. I mean, the way they initially thought it would have been upstream, but if he jumped further south, then it would have been downstream.
Mm-hmm.
And it was buried fairly quickly after. I mean, it wouldn't have survived in the condition it was in if it had been exposed.
Oh, those are heavy winters up there, too.
Yeah, and the rubber bands they said were still intact. Those would have degraded in a year or so.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the fact that money was there, why didn't he take all the money with him? Why bury any of it? I think he probably didn't make it out.
Yeah, and his body was dangling from some tree somewhere.
And then Mount St. Helens happens. And
Maybe he did die from exposure, trying to get out of there.
Injured himself on the
And
landing or something.
Listen, Amelia Earhart was probably taken by coconut crabs. And
Yeah.
so...
Actually, they've got a lot of evidence that we know exactly what happened to Amelia Earhart.
coconut
That's-
crabs. Anyway.
Yeah,
but
not so much of a mystery
his body would have
anymore.
been picked at and taken places. And
There's bears up there.
yeah.
Well, nature's going to do what nature does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and people disappear in forests and stuff all the time. And
Yeah,
so
we've done shows on it.
Yeah.
They literally just
Vanish.
vanish without any trace whatsoever.
Leave their shoes.
Yeah, and I think he
Go
didn't
back and watch that show.
I think he didn't know. He didn't have a really good idea where he was because the flight plan got changed. It wasn't his initial plan to go in the direction they were going. It was nighttime. The weather wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of things. We know that jump is survivable because it's been done many times since then.
Right.
But I think he probably injured himself, couldn't make it out, but it's not as good of a story that way.
Right. But if that's the end, then
Yeah.
But again, like that one FBI agent said, when Mount St. Helens blew, I think any chance of finding anything else is long gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, last word, buddy. You're the one who. No, actually, Steve came up with this one.
Steve
That's
came
good.
up with
Steve
it.
came
No,
up.
I don't. You've got the.
No, I mean, I'd likely, right? Likely you don't make it.
Yeah.
But that's not fantastical.
Yeah.
And
Well-
conspiracy
And it's not a 0% chance that you
Yes.
make
Right.
it out. So
But I do. I think he got out. I don't know why he didn't spend the money. Or very little of it, if any, because it really never went into circulation. Aside from it was the thrill. But then turn around and months later, basically do it again and get caught.
and then go out in a shootout.
That's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's that guy,
Yeah.
If it
it's
was McCoy.
Yeah.
I believe it's a mystery still, but I do actually believe he got out because of the time 1971.
Mm-hmm.
Things just weren't recorded or understood back then a lot of the time. And so I think he spent the money. I think he was able to do a workaround because people could do a lot back then without being tracked, without being
There's
caught.
somebody right now in India with a bunch of 20s that start with L.
Yeah.
Well, I believe he didn't make it out. I want to believe that he's on an island somewhere
that'd be cool.
in his old age.
So he's 90 years
like
old.
the end of Office Space.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes!
Yeah.
I got it. He's in Argentina with Osama bin Laden, and Elvis.
Yes!
And they're just drinking Mai Tais going, they're still talking about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
You see that podcast recently?
We're never going out of style, baby.
Yep.
Never going out of style. All right. Well, here's the DB Cooper and the money he took. You've been watching Jackalopes Explore.
Yep, Argentina.
There was salt on the.
Where would you go if you were?
Oh, that's a good question.